Well, hello once again, everybody. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by 101 CBD. Now, you know that raw CBD or CBDA is more bioavailable to our bodies, which means that we can process it or metabolize it easier with less time. You also know that CBDA is the acid precursor to CBD. And we also talked about how CBDA affects inflammation by affecting those COX-2 enzymes. Now, let's talk a little bit about raw CBD and serotonin. The serotonin is a chemical produced by the nerve cells to aid in the signaling between cells. And it's vital for a lot of human functions like motor skills, sleep, eating, digestion, and emotions. Now, a couple of stressors, including radiation and chemotherapy, can trigger the body to release excess serotonins, which cause nausea and vomiting. Now, vomiting can typically be controlled with medication. The nausea, on the other hand, is a little harder. A lot of cancer patients say that nausea causes much more distress than the vomiting does because the nausea is just a continuous sensation. In fact, some cancer patients consider stopping the cancer treatment because the nausea is so bad. Now, scientists have demonstrated that raw CBD or CBDA can affect the body's 5-HT serotonin-producing receptors, which means that it has the potential of being a medication for chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, otherwise known as CINV, and other conditions that induce these symptoms. And this raw CBD, this CBDA, is exactly what you get in every product from 101 CBD. So go over to 101cbd.org, take a look at their products, order yourself and your pet some CBD oil. And they want you to know that for Cyber Monday, that is Monday, December 2nd, 2019, you're going to get 40% off the entire website. Anything you want. Anything, however many you want, 40% off everything. Okay, on top of that, for every order, you're going to get a bottle of their new blueberry flavor tincture, and you're also going to get a t-shirt that has Raphael Mechoulam on it. It's a pretty cool t-shirt, I've seen it. So once again, go over to 101cbd.org to get this awesome Cyber Monday offer. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. They got a lot of smart people over at Delta Leaf Labs. One of the things that they put together is a plant DNA sex testing kit, which lets you know 4 times sooner whether you've got a male or a female cannabis plant on your hands. They make it really easy to take a sample. You send that sample into the lab, and a few days after they get it, you'll know the results of that test. And since those test results are so quick, that means it's saving you time and money. So go over to deltaleaflabs.com, order your plant DNA sex testing kits today, and don't forget to use coupon code IMGS10 to get 10% off of that order. Okay. Now let's start the show. Well, greetings once again, brothers and sisters, and welcome back. This is the In My Grow Show, the podcast dedicated to taking the mystery out of cannabis. I'm your host, Alex. And first of all, I hope that everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I had a really awesome time. Went over to my brother's house, hung out with his family, took my family, saw a couple of other families, had a lot of great food. Now, later on, I am going to be talking a little bit about how we wound up with a 0.3 THC percentage limit on hemp. But before that, I want to talk about a couple of things, even before we get into the rest of the show. So a couple of weeks ago, well, not even a couple of weeks ago, every so often, I'll put up a post on Instagram and I'll get a little notification that says, this post is doing whatever, 80% better than other posts, so, you should promote. Promote this post, or you've earned a $10 credit to promote this post. So I finally clicked on it and said, okay, you know what, let's try it. Let's promote a post. Let's see what happens. So I go through the whole, I have to log into Facebook, and I really don't like logging into Facebook. It's not like my favorite thing to do. But since Facebook owns Instagram, okay, it's something I had to do. So log into Facebook, they walk me through all the steps of how to, advertise a post and this and that and the other thing. And so I hit send, and they said it's being reviewed. Okay, bitchin', it should be a couple of days. Well, I get an email back saying that the post has been denied because it goes against their policy of, whatever their fucking policy is. I don't know. So, no big deal, right? I get it. It's not the first time things that I've tried to do with the podcast have been denied because, people are just too weirded out about cannabis. But what I don't get, here's what I don't understand, is why do they send me these things in the first place? If the algorithm's just going to turn around and deny it anyways, why does the algorithm send it out in the first place? I don't get it. It's just a waste of my time. But, whatever. That's what I get for thinking it'll be different. Because I tried the same thing with Google Ads. I tried to buy ad space on YouTube. And yeah, same kind of thing, man. YouTube and Google said, no, sorry, buddy, you can't advertise. But I mean, I guess I'm lucky, at least they left my profile up. I've known cannabis people who have their profile shut down. So whatever, there you go. That's Instagram advertising for you. And the next thing is, okay, the presidential election is like a year away. Barely, but it's a year away. And, the president's in the news because he did a bunch of dumb shit. And at the same time, we've also got, like, the Democrats with all their candidates about who wants to go up against the president. And one of the big speaking points for the Democratic candidates is, cannabis legalization and how the failed drug war affected certain communities. Those are the two big talking points when it comes to cannabis. And they've been going back and forth at each other, and all the candidates have been trying to one-up each other. Okay, I get it. Now, here's what I'm wondering is, as it gets closer to election, and if the president keeps being in really big trouble as far as, like, they're actually going to impeach him or remove him from office. I doubt they're going to remove him from office, but you know what? That's a whole other conversation, not for this podcast. So here's what I'm wondering is, if the president keeps getting in trouble over impeachment, do you think he may just, like, legalize cannabis federally because he wants to get reelected and he figured he can get the cannabis vote if he legalizes it? I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. I wouldn't really put it past him just to kind of also take the wind out of everybody's sails, all the Democratic candidates about, I would legalize it and this and that, and I'm going to do this. The president's going to be like, nope, fuck you guys. I'm still here and I'm going to do this thing. It'd be pretty funny if he does. I hope he does. If he does, this is what I'm hoping he'll do. I just need him to deschedule it and then put in, like, a couple of regulations. You got to be over 21. And that's really it. Leave it alone from there and let every state just handle it. I've spoken about this before. I've said this before. You know this. But that's all I need. If anybody's listening that has the president's ear, just let him do that. Just let him do that. It'll be fine. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about before we really get into the show is that I opened up a Twitter account. And I did it because I was signing up for this one service and they needed a Twitter account, so I signed up for it. And I have to admit, I don't know what I'm doing on Twitter. I don't know how Twitter works. I don't know how I'm supposed to interact on Twitter. So I don't think I'm going to be very active over there, tweeting. But you can find me. I think you can just look for Alex Robles. Or is it in my Grow show? I don't remember. Once again, it's all a blur. But if you do find me, say hello. Because as I said, I really don't know what's going on over there. That's all. I just wanted you to know if you see me on Twitter, say hello. Don't expect too much. That was it. All right, now let's move on to the strain of the week. And today, I'm going to give it up again to one of my favorite strains that it seems like I'm only seeing once a year. And that is the ever so lovely cherry AK-47. Now, if you've heard the show in the past, you know I'm a big fan of the AK-47. It's been with me for a long time. It's been, we've been together through thick and thin. And this cherry AK-47, it doesn't disappoint me. So here's just a reminder, okay? The AK-47 itself is a sativa-dominant strain. It's a mix of Colombian, Mexican, Thai, and a little Afghani varieties thrown in there. But now the cherry is a rare phenotype of that AK-47. It's got this little reddish-purple flower going on. And it really does have a cherry pie, a fruity, sweet aroma and taste to it. It's just an awesome fucking flower. It gives me a nice, steady, long-lasting, cerebral high that I can feel behind my eyeballs. It does keep me focused. At the same time, it makes me super chatty, if that makes any sense, focused and chatty, because chatty for me is just distracted. But I don't know, it's weird like that, Cannabis affects everyone differently, and that's how it affects me. So there you go. It's focused and chatty. Yeah, that should be on a shirt, huh? Focused and chatty. Anyways, I'm drifting. On top of that sweet cherry pie kind of smell, that sweet fruity smell, it's also a little dirty, a little flowery. But all of that's good. I love it all. The cherry AK-47, folks, if you see it out there, pick it up. It's great daytime smoke. It's a great party smoke, too, for especially this time of year. It's great for it. If you find it, get it. So a quick side note on that. I rolled up a couple of holiday joints for Thanksgiving, and it was a mix of the cherry AK, the lava cake that was left over, and some pineapple kush that somebody gave me. So I broke a bunch of it up, all 3 of them together, broke them up and, rolled it up in a machine. Yes, I roll it on a machine. That's right. Anyways, so rolled them all up, and at the bottom of the tray, after I was done rolling my joints, I found this one little seed, which was really cool. I like finding seeds. I like bag seeds. I get excited. I like growing. But I have no idea what flower it came from. I mean, it'd be nice if I knew, whether it's going to grow a lava cake or a cherry or a pineapple, but I have no idea. I'm just going to grow it as a mystery and enjoy it. There you go. That's a good plan. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. So as I said, the cherry AK-47, that is the strain of the week. Pick it up, folks. Now, at this point, I usually talk about what's in my social media feed, but I'm not going to do that today. Instead, I want to take a moment and talk once again about something that I know I've spoken about before. And I want to talk directly to you people who are representing or who are repping CBD and hemp oil companies. Okay, do me a favor, because I'm tired of going to these freaking events and listening to you reps just refer to CBD or hemp oil as non-psychoactive. That's not true. That's not true, because I'll hear you say it's non-psychoactive in one sentence, and then the sentence right after that, you'll tell people, oh yeah, CBD is going to help quiet the mind, and it's going to help, give you some mental clarity. Both of those things are symptoms of psychoactivity. Do you realize that? Okay, and to go along with that, there's nothing wrong with psychoactivity. There's nothing wrong with it being psychoactive. Okay, nicotine is psychoactive. Caffeine is psychoactive. Yoga is psychoactive. Me kissing my wife, you kissing somebody you really want to kiss is psychoactive. There's nothing wrong with that. You should be describing it in terms of intoxication and impairment. Is it going to make you feel intoxicated? And is it going to impair your senses? Is it going to give you an unsteady gait or like a wobbly walk? Is it going to slow down your motor reflex action? Is it going to make you slower to react to things? That's how you should be presenting the topic of intoxication and impairment when it comes to CBD and hemp oil. Please stop calling it non-psychoactive, because it sounds like you don't know what you're talking about. It sounds like you're just reading from whatever literature they sent you. Remember that. Intoxication and impairment. Present it that way. Okay, please. All right. Now, let's move on to the report from the Cannabis Frontline. And I'm going to start with an article that I found over at Marijuana Moment, which is titled Alcohol-Related Car Crashes Decline in Idaho After Washington Legalized Marijuana Next Door. And this was put together by Kimberly Lawson. And it starts off, after Washington State implemented legal marijuana sales for adult use in 2014, the number of drunk driving accidents in neighboring Idaho decreased, a new study reports. The association was strongest among counties closest to the Washington border. The research was authored by economist Benjamin Henson, and it found that access to recreational marijuana was associated with 21% decrease in accidents involving alcohol in Idaho counties directly bordering Washington. Counties located 1 hour away from Washington saw a reduction of 18%, while counties 3 hours away saw a reduction of 10%. When the driving distance from Washington was 4 hours or more, the effects were insignificant. The interaction with distance suggests that the effects of legal access on alcohol-related crashes diminishes by roughly 3% for each hour of distance from the retailer. So I think that was a really cool study that came out. Basically what this guy did was find that Idaho had less DUI accidents or drunk driving accidents when neighboring Washington legalized marijuana for adult use. And the closer that the towns were to the border of Washington was directly related to how many fewer traffic accidents there were related to alcohol. So again, it just seems like these propaganda scare tactics about legalizing marijuana and driving are just that, scare tactics. Alright, now the next thing I want to talk about is Mr. Anthony Clark, and he is running for Congress in the great state of Illinois. And the reason I'm bringing him up is because he was on a YouTube roundtable. And on this roundtable, in the video, the candidate Anthony Clark is seen like smoking a joint. Like he's literally smoking a joint on video, talking about where he stands on cannabis, why the drug war has failed, and especially why it's really important for Illinois to pass like really good cannabis laws. It was great to see, man. It was awesome to see that where this conversation has gone from politicians saying they never exhaled or they never inhaled. So good on Mr. Clark for really pushing that conversation out there, man. I'm hoping how many other political candidates are going to actually be more honest about their use of cannabis. I really do hope this is more open kind of conversation that we can have with our politicians. Let's seriously get past this stigma of cannabis being a negative in every situation. So yeah, if you want to check it out, just look up Anthony Clark video, I guess, and it should come up, the YouTube roundtable. So the last thing I want to talk about again is just how much the legal cannabis market is struggling here in California. They're not just struggling against the high cost of regulation, so I'm not saying we don't need regulation. We absolutely do need to regulate. And I don't think there's anything wrong with how they're regulating it. My problem is the cost of those regulations. How much we're taxing and charging these companies. Because you really do have to be well funded to get into the legal cannabis market out here in California. And those high costs are truly a barrier to enter the market for a lot of people. So instead of people wanting to do it legal and right, they just start a black market business, which really isn't that hard in California to keep going. Because see, only 40% of California cities actually allow the cannabis industry to be there, actually allow some kind of, brick and mortar store or some kind of production or cultivation. Only 40%. Okay, let me put this in perspective for you, especially, people in Michigan and Illinois. You need to think about this. So while cannabis is legal for adults here in California, you can't get it in every town. You can't get it in every county. Sometimes you can't get it until like 2 or 3 counties away legally. So that means to fill that void, because nature hates a vacuum, the black market steps in and says, okay, there's no legal weed around you, but I've got weed for you. It's a lot cheaper too. It's not regulated. So, here's my weed, buy this weed. And people do it. Why? Because there are what's called cannabis deserts. That's what this is, a cannabis desert. You can't buy any legal weed anywhere, even though it's legal to have. And the reason we have this situation is because when we voted for the law, we were so excited in voting for legal cannabis that we didn't read the fine print once again. And we allowed cities and municipalities to opt out of allowing cannabis to be set up in their town. Okay, and 60% of them, a majority of them, decided not to allow legal cannabis there. So the black market fills the void. And that's why you'll hear people in the industry say that California doesn't have enough pot shops. This is what they're talking about. They don't have enough pot shops. And with the high taxation, and that just once again puts this huge burden on these cannabis companies who, right now they're starting to lay people off. So if your state's about to start talking about getting legal weed, take all of these things into consideration. Take California, for example, of what happened to us, and take Colorado, for example, on how they're doing it. Take the good and the bad of every place and then just come together with a really good plan. Us here in California, we're really having to walk some of this stuff back and just pay attention and just be more involved in the details of it. So yeah, once again, that is just my rant about better cannabis laws for California. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the report from the Cannabis Frontline. All right, now next, I want to talk about a reoccurring segment I'm going to start to do. And it's going to be called Free the Plant. And it's going to mostly be focused on hemp and CBD. And the reason for that is because I don't think I know enough about either one of those subjects, really. And there's a lot going on out there. I've been really focused on the THC and cannabis side of the plant. That I really didn't know or pay attention to what was going on with the hemp and the CBD side. Because it turns out that about a year ago, GW Pharmaceuticals actually patented CBD, at which kind of tripped me out, threw me for a loop. I was totally, blown away by that. I was talking to Justin from 101 CBD, and he was telling me this, and I was just incredibly blown away by it. And since both the hemp and the CBD market are so new, things are just changing really fast. And I just want to get a better understanding of it, especially if pharmaceutical companies are out there, patenting certain constituents, certain parts of plants like CBD, then what's stopping them from patenting THC? And then, then all of a sudden, pharmaceutical companies are going to take away the plant. They're going to take it away from us and just turn it into medicine. Okay, which means now I'm not saying that marijuana isn't medicinal, because it is medicinal for us. But it's medicinal for us the way that food is medicinal for us. We need food to survive, to be healthy. We need cannabis, in my opinion, to be healthy and to have homeostasis. And once we let these pharmaceutical companies just take them over and designate them and assign them to just be medicine, then that means we no longer, as people, have control over it. We have less control over it. We can't make what are called artisanal preparations or artisanal tinctures from it. You have to be associated. You're going to have to be associated with some kind of pharmaceutical company. So that's why I'm going to start this segment called Free the Plant. And I don't think it's going to be a weekly segment, but it is going to be an ongoing thing for a while. And now with that said, the first thing I want to talk about is that a few weeks ago I started thinking, like, how did hemp wind up with a 0.3 THC limit? I've known about it, but I've never really understood how it got that limit. So I did a little digging, and I think I have the answer. Now, I want to remind you guys, I want to let you guys know, I've only been looking at this for a few weeks, 3-4 weeks tops. People have been talking about this and know a lot more about the subject than I do. So I'm sure I'm going to miss something. I'm going to leave something out. If I did, find me on Instagram at InMyGrowShow, or send me an email that is inmygrow@gmail.com and let me know, and we'll talk about it. Let's have a broader conversation, help educate me, and, you can help educate others. Now, with that said, and getting back to this whole 0.3% THC limit on hemp, what I found was this. One of the first scientists to really float this idea of having a 0.3 limit for hemp was a Canadian doctor, Dr. Ernest Small. Now, I'm going to read a couple of sections from an interview that Dr. Smalls did with Robert C. Clark back in 1999. And back then, he was the principal research scientist at the Eastern Cereal and Oilseed Research Center in Ottawa, which is a section of the Agricultural and Agri-Food Canada, which is a part of the Canadian government. And one of the first questions that he asked the doctor was, how did you come to work with cannabis? And he said, in 1970, Health Canada became interested in growing a standard supply of medical marijuana for pharmaceutical research and in clarifying some basic botanical issues about the species for forensic purposes. As well, the Ledane Parliamentary Commission undertook an extensive examination of medical, social, and legal issues concerning cannabis in Canada. The AAFC, which is the Agricultural and Agri-Food that I read to you earlier, it says the AAFC placed me, Dr. Smalls, in charge of the botanical research as well as the cultivation for the supply of medical marijuana. And he was also a second assistant in the Ledane Commission. Now, just for some history, the Ledane Commission in Canada was put together to research, to look into cannabis in Canada, of all those things, of how to grow it, how it's used. I think it was put together from 69 to 72. So he was part of that commission also. And that's how he came really to work with cannabis. Now, the next question that Robert C. Clark asks him is about how he came to the 0.3 THC threshold. And this is what he asks him. When was the 0.3 THC threshold for industrial hemp first suggested, and from where was it derived? Did this standard replace a previous one? And here's what the doctor answered. Over the years, different researchers have suggested different levels of THC as means of recognizing groupings within cannabis. It has long been appreciated that drug selections of cannabis with high levels of THC originate from southern areas of Eurasia and from Africa. And in contrast, selections of cannabis used as source of fiber and oilseed originated from the northern Eurasia and had very limited drug potential. As documented in my publications in the 70s, we picked the level of 0.3 as a formal means of separating the two classes of plants on the basis of numerical taxonomic methods. We grew several hundred different ascensions, recognized the two groups on a number of physical and physiological characteristics independent of THC levels, and the 0.3 THC level was calculated to be the concentration that naturally best separated the two groups. So basically what he said there was that they grew hundreds of different varieties of cannabis, and they used the 0.3 marker to separate the ones that they would consider hemp and the ones that they would consider the drug form of cannabis. Okay, that's all they did. They didn't research any kind of level of intoxication or how much THC is needed to make somebody feel high. The guy just picked a number and he said, this is what I'm going to use to separate one from the other. And that's how Canada wound up with its 0.3 threshold of THC. This guy didn't do, there was no research behind it. There was nothing other than this guy saying, this is how Canada is going to now make the difference between both of these plants, make the difference between hemp and the drug form of cannabis. But the big questions of intoxication or psychoactivity, none of those were answered. None of those were even what he was looking for. He was just looking for a way to separate the plants so he knew which ones he would be able to present to the hemp industry in Canada, I guess, to say, okay, these varieties are good for you to grow and they'll grow well in Canada. And I'm not sure, because the more I dug into this topic, the more questions I had, man. Like I said, if you have more information or can explain it clearer to me, please let me know. Because one of the questions that I couldn't find an answer to is, how did this 0.3 definition like get so widespread, get so accepted? Because other European countries at the time had their own, definition. Some European countries, I think, were as low as 0.2%. But I haven't found out, why is it that we accepted it, especially why we accepted it in America. Now, I have a couple of theories about why we accepted it in America, but it's just odd to me. One of my theories about why it was so, accepted here in America, this Canadian definition of hemp, is out of fear. I think, I think the lawmakers, since it was such a low THC count, they're like, yes, let's use that definition. So that's why it became so attractive to lawmakers and to everybody to accept it as a good definition. Is, okay, yeah, it's nice and low. People aren't going to get high from it. Great. I don't know. Is that it? Don't know. Just a theory of mine. The other theory I have about why this 0.3 definition is so widely accepted around the world is, since Canada was the first big industrialized country to legalize cannabis back in 2017, especially for export, and they already had their definition of what hemp was, which was a 0.3 threshold, they were able to set the limits. They were able to say, look, this is what we're exporting. We're exporting this hemp that's 0.3, and this is what you're getting. This is what's good. Okay, now, here's why I don't understand why American farmers or even American politicians, got together and accepted such a low THC threshold. Because the National Laboratory in 2009 helped put together, along with the UN, this a document called Recommended Methods for the Identification and Analysis of Cannabis and Cannabis Products. And in that document, the National Laboratory for America sets a THC limit of less than 1%, which means that producers, if we were to use that definition of it, would be able to take the THC limit up to 0.9 if they want, 0.99 if they want to, just as long as it's not over 1%. Which I think is a much better definition of what hemp is. Because for one, we don't know how much THC we need for people to get high. I mean, we have to have those studies, but we don't know that yet. And I also think that a higher THC count in our CBD oil will make that CBD oil more effective. Because while CBD oil is good for a lot of ailments, having more THC in there really would help with that analgesic, that painkiller effect, because you do have that intoxicating molecule in there, that intoxicating effect that's going to come along with the THC. So that's going to make the effectiveness as an analgesic, as a painkiller, that much more better, in my opinion. Is that even a thing? More better? I don't think it is. But anyways, you know what I'm talking about, right? So yeah, that's what I don't understand, is why the United States adopted it. I mean, we even adopted it back in the 2014 Farm Bill as this definition, even though we already had our own definition here of 0.9, or less than 1%, I should say. Now, I understand it's written in the Farm Bill. That is the definition for it right now. But you know what? Farm bills are written every 4 years. And I think we can take this time before the next farm bill is written, because I'd really like to change that definition. I think we need to bump that up to less than 1%. I think that'd be great. A lot less crops would be destroyed also. I mean, there was a story where earlier this year, I think it was in Kentucky, these huge plantations of hemp had to be destroyed because they were just over the threshold. One was 0.4, and I think the other one was like a 0.5 or a 0.6, something really low, really ridiculous. But the whole crops had to be destroyed. Think of how much crops would be saved just to have that a little bit higher threshold of less than 1%. I think that'd be amazing. That'd be awesome. So as I was starting to say, farm bills go up every 4 years. We're not going to get a chance to write a new one till like 2022. So let's take this time to help educate each other. I'm going to take this time to help educate myself, and hopefully you guys will come along for that education. I'll learn in public, learn out loud. No, I think it's learn in public. Anyways, so we can educate ourselves, and in turn we can educate our politicians so they can rewrite this thing a better way. Now, I have heard a couple of conspiratorial theories about why, America has, why we accepted this 0.3 threshold. One of them is that, on a lot of these hemp and CBD boards or cannabis boards around the United States, there are a lot of Canadian businessmen. So they themselves have a stake in perpetuating this whole 0.3 threshold. Don't know if that's true. Sounds a little sinister. Could be. Don't know. The other thing that I also heard, which makes a little more sense, is that, Canada's fighting to keep this 0.3 threshold of hemp, this definition of hemp, worldwide, because they know that, if America has a stronger hemp market, then that could really devastate Canada's own market. If our farmers, are able to grow hemp easier, then that's really going to affect Canada, because, we do have better weather down here. This growing season is longer. And, there's just population-wise a lot more people. And if we're making our own hemp and CBD oil or hemp oil for ourselves, for our own people, then what are we importing from Canada for? So those are a couple of the theories that I've heard. One of them is more plausible than the other. So, there you go. I hope this helped you understand hemp and CBD a little better in this country. I know it helped me understand it more by talking about it. At least I could kind of organize my thoughts a little better, even though it seemed like I was a little scattered. But that's okay. You know what? If you have any questions, if you have any comments about this episode, find me on Instagram at InMyGrowShow. Send me an email, inmygrow@gmail.com. Find me on the Cannabis app at Alex Robles. Go look for me on Twitter also. But leave me a comment, leave me a question about this episode. Well, mis amigos, my friends, guess what? Those are the end of my notes. What does that mean? That means that I have nothing else to share with you today. That's it. That's all I've got. Now, I want to thank all the artists who let me use their music to put the show together. I appreciate that very much. And as always, if this episode has entertained you, educated you, or even given you a little escape from your day, go over to patreon.com/inmygrow and leave a financial donation. Because those funds just help me pay for different hosting fees, buy equipment. It just makes it easier to keep the show going and put it together. Now, if you don't want to go over to Patreon, why don't you go over to inmygrow.com, click on the Support the Show tab, and then buy a t-shirt. Another easy way to support the show is, before you go shopping at Amazon this holiday season, click on the Amazon link at the top of the show notes, because that just lets them know that we sent you and the show gets a commission. Now, if you can't support the show financially, don't worry about it. I get it, especially during this time of year. No problem. But here's how you can help. Subscribe to the website, inmygrow.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Go over to YouTube, find the In My Grow Show with Alex, and then subscribe to the channel. And after you do all that subscribing, do one more thing. Tell 3 other people about the show. Really easy. That's it. That's all I need you to do. As I said before, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Now you know I love you all very much. And remember to always grow, learn, and teach.
What happened?
Didn't you hear? We won. The ink on the page spells out the story of fire and horror, of war and glory. What could children and housewives do? War took their fathers, you poisoned their food. Survivors crawl, writhe in pain as they're bathed in black and rain. Make 'em all.